Welcome to the We Are Change talk show. Thank you for joining me. The following guest, Peter Maxwell Slattery, has seen UFOs many times in his life. The claims are bizarre, but there is video evidence published to substantiate much of his statements. He's been on Sunrise and many other TV programs. You're about to hear an amazing story. I advise the viewers to keep an open mind. Peter, thanks for joining us on the program. Now, what you have witnessed is nothing short of spectacular. Can you please explain to the viewers when these encounters began?
The experiences for me started between the ages of 8 and 12. Before that, I was getting some telepathy in terms of I was getting sort of information before it happened that I was telling my parents about. Nobody knew what to do with it, though it was happening. So not long after that time, I moved into a house with my mum, and I would actually wake up and I would see Kurt Cobain in the room. Now, what goes weird with this is that over time I would see him start to vibrate after a few appearances, and in between like a vibration, you would see Kurt Cobain and then your typical grey alien. But it wasn't grey from what I could see. It was more of a white colour with it's like cigarette ash. If you dab it with your finger, that texture, that's what the skin was like. It wasn't smooth, though I've seen various different types of greys.
Wow.
But that's how it sort of started. There'd be a light coming in from the peripheral of the outside of the curtain, sort of shining in the room, which is how I could see what was going on.
Yeah.
And then I ended up having my first UFO sighting when I was 12 years old, about 4 years later.
That's extraordinary. So it's like extra sensory perception, like a psychic ability almost, where you can see through to a different dimension.
Well, it's a mixture of that with the physicality, because what's different with my case compared to a lot of others is that a lot of people have seen these beings with me, and I've been able to get them on video camera, whether it was them personally or their crafts, or just high strangeness in general. But the extrasensory perception is part of it in terms of it's another sense that we've got. And so it shows the multidimensional aspect of our reality and how we can communicate with other beings in other realms and other places.
Very much so. Now, some contactees have admitted some type of paralysis throughout the night, a sleep apnea. Is that what you can recall as well?
Not really. Like, there's probably been a couple of times that I can think looking back, but that was to my younger days. But everything, like in recent times, has not been like that at all. If I wake up in the middle of the night, I'll be able to get up, or I can see what's going on in the room. Or sometimes what's sort of been weird to report, though it does happen to a lot of people, is their crafts will land on me in my room. And so what happens is the crafts go in apparition form, like a ghost, and they're able to sort of basically land on you. You'll feel a vibration humming going through. It's almost like singing bowls. If you can get the lowest sounding one and the higher pitched one sort of going together, it's very similar to that, but very subtle. But it goes through and they can vibrate you onto the craft, which a lot of people are now reporting as well, plus the Native Americans and the original people of Australia. When I've spoken to the King here and other people in America, they've reported that with their culture going back a long time and experiencing it themselves as well.
Very much so. Many different cultures you can see in rock carvings, can't you? Many depictions. It's written all throughout history. So this is a common occurrence, and many other people can validate that as well, can't they, Peter?
Yeah, not just for myself. Like I have a lot of witnesses and evidence to produce, but it's, not just happening to me. There's, in my opinion, probably a few million people in the world that are consciously experiencing this, but don't want to go into it because of the ridicule, or they don't want to go down, swallow that red pill because of what it opens up.
Yes, and fear of being judged by others and not being taken seriously, which would keep a lot of people from stepping forward and divulging such information. So you can see some craft, they enter into our conscious realm and then they disappear again. It's like they can melt the fabric of time and space, can't they?
Yeah, from what they've said to me is they say it's got a lot to do with the electromagnetic component and consciousness, and that time's like a river.
Propulsion systems. There's been a scale drawing of the craft. Some say there's masthead amplifiers, capacitors, and that's how it would operate. It's completely foreign to anything that we've seen here before on this planet, isn't it?
It is, in terms of what we use, is basically like fireworks in terms of, it pushes something out the back while burning some type of fuel. Whether it's our rockets or our planes, jet engines, it's completely different. They're basically immune to anything outside of their environment, which is why there is no G-force. Also, the crafts are alive and living. They've got a symbiotic relationship with the pilot. So this is... I know, for example, I've heard of David Adair talk, who was a rocket scientist. He was talking about how, I think years ago, at one of the universities there, they had these helmets that I think he had to go and help solve, where they had the helmets for pilots where through thought they could fire the mechanism through the craft for the missiles.
That's exactly right.
Yeah,
through my research, that's what I've discovered as well.
Yeah, so they've been doing this for about 20 years. Like in terms of what we know in the public domain, what's going on in terms of the black government, the black budget, of course, there's been from reports to me as well, and I know that there is secret space programs. I know that we've been going to not just the moon but other places for probably since about 1958. They've obviously harnessed, whether it's back engineered or they've been working with extraterrestrials. I think in a couple of cases it seems to be either way. It's pretty crazy what's going on.
That's exactly right. That's what is the belief. Reverse engineering of craft. They've deconstructed that, and there's a main fleet. Some say it's being held at Los Alamos. A lot of these underground bases as well. It's all hidden away from the public. And as you said, if they did go to the moon, it would be with far greater technology than what they've revealed to the public. It's not this rocket combustion. That's not how it's working. It's they're offsetting spatial divergence.
Yeah, I think there's just what we see in the public and then what's going on behind the scenes. And so I think even with now Trump talking about the Space Force, I think he's probably found out about it and he's wondering, how do I let the people know about this? And it's like, well, let's create a Space Force. But unbeknownst to people, there's been one going for a very long time.
Right. So now some of your encounters, talk us through some of the feelings and emotions that you've had. Is it in sense experience of fear? How would you explain that?
A large majority of it is positive. It's like a euphoric ecstasy type feeling. There's this loving, this oneness. It's surreal. It's hard to explain because when you're experiencing it, what's happening is you're going multidimensional mind. You know everything that they know and they know everything that you know. There's this symbiotic connection. And so how people think they would interact with them is not how things play out. Though I do get to ask questions, I do get to find out information, but you sort of know it at the same time because it's like you're talking to yourself at the level of consciousness that these beings are at. The flip side of that is I have had encounters with reptilians and reptilian greys, and they weren't so positive at all. One encounter left me not even being able to go into my room and sleep there for about a year.
Being native Terrans, and they are a malevolent race. They say that we're just taking up space on their planet, and there's a lot of animosity towards humans. They're ghastly creatures, and they live underground. Is that where you've come across it?
Well, the experiences and what I've come across is sort of varied because there is different types. There was one race that I had an experience with that told me that they're breaking up into factions because they can no longer evolve consciously at the level of consciousness that they're at the time. So there is this sort of division going on between them. But from what I've been shown and what I've experienced is that the reptilians are actually partly being controlled by a darker force behind them that created an artificial intelligence, which the artificial intelligence was a byproduct of what these beings created to hold a frequency so they could exist here. And what they do is they even overshadow the reptilian like the reptilian can overshadow the human in order to get fear and energy from the earth human and other beings to feed this artificial intelligence for what I could call the archons, which actually are the fallen Elohim. So I interact on occasions with these beings that are called the Elohim, and they're liquid blue light beings, and they're positive. There's nothing negative about them. Their true nature, what I was showing, is that our higher self is one of them, and it comes down the planes and dimensions to experience here. But they said that there was some of them that was in that state, and they decided to stay, and through that had to create this artificial intelligence. So It's almost like, I use the analogy, it's like robbing a bank and they're the mastermind, but we see the reptilians doing it and look at them and blame them. But this is a war that goes back to the Orion Wars, where the Draco reptilian and different types of greys and reptilians tried to take over in Orion, which actually backtracked to Lyra and went to another galaxy before that, and it sort of swept across the universe. And we're sort of here incarnated now like the antivirus to try and rectify things.
That's exactly my understanding of it too. There's an Alpha Draconis star system, Orion Wars, several different types. It's some with winged creatures, others that aren't. Some are more friendly. It just goes to show the whole galaxy, we've been visited by interdimensional creatures of many different species. It's very alarming, isn't it?
It is, but it shows how big and beautiful things can actually be, but it does come down to consciousness. And so we can talk about all the things wrong with the world going on, and there's a lot of things that are going wrong, but there's also a lot of good things, and humans are good at heart, natured. So what it comes down to is just our level of consciousness and rising to the occasion in terms of meeting them halfway, because it does come down to us individually working on our doing self-mastery, working on what we need to work on to be happy people, to be productive people, to be successful within ourselves, not external in the world. But then we have to also be able to shift that and be able to do it as a collective as well.
Absolutely. And it's not fantasy. It's even written in the Bible, isn't it? Reptilian.
Yeah.
All throughout.
In the Mahabharata, in the Torah, in the Judeo-Christian Bible, it's in Quran. It's in a lot of different ancient texts. The Japanese believe from the Pleiades.
Yes.
Also, the Australian Aboriginals believe that they came from the Pleiades. A lot of Native Americans, a lot of cultures have this tied to the Pleiades. And even in recent years, they've found the Gosford glyphs here in Australia, which has been authenticated by Egyptian authorities, where there's actually a pharaoh, an Egyptian pharaoh that was buried there, and his brother actually died on the shores. So the Egyptians were coming to Australia for thousands of years to get their mystery school teachings, and people can visit that site today, where one of the walls at this place has authenticated Egyptian hieroglyphs on it, and on the other wall, it talks about beings from the Pleiades that came here, manipulated the Denisovan DNA to create the original people, the Aboriginal, to incarnate in. And they've now also been able to verify that some of the gold in Tutankhamun's tomb comes from Australia, from Ballarat, and also there's a boomerang in the Ballarat tribe. So this is where our history is not what we think it is, and that's, a very small part of it.
Exactly. It's fascinating. Some people have even stated they've stumbled across like a cave that had a frequency, and they felt a heightened sense of awareness. And some of these caves have said to be like a reptilian hive underground. And sometimes the government has built a base over the top to keep people away.
Yeah, there's lots of different stories that I've heard as well. Over a year ago, I was flown to Italy for a television program there with a Japanese crew, and I told them exactly where we had to be to go and see this craft and what time it would appear, and that's exactly what happened. I'd never been to that island as well. So I've done that here in America. Sometimes I will get specifics, but it's not something that happens regularly. It's just usually out of the blue. I'll get a thought to go out or just to look up while I'm outside, and that's how it occurs.
Yeah, and that's a very good thing too to look up, because not a lot of people do. They don't look at the skies, especially in the middle of the night, 2 o'clock in the morning. That's when it's usually a hotbed for activity, isn't it?
Yeah, it's all the time, but night time's a lot easier to see the crafts, to tell people, because like during the day, unless you know what you're looking for, a lot of the time when people start to see daytime crafts with me, they go, I wouldn't have seen that unless you pointed it out. But night time's a lot easier to see the crafts. They've got the energy field around, they're a lot brighter. Night time, just all people got to do is look up, and soon enough they'll see something.
Exactly right. And I think more sightings are on the rise. So when people step forward with their testimonials, a lot more contactees and abductees are being taken more seriously now than what they were in the past.
Definitely. I think a lot of people in government wouldn't even be aware of this, but the people that may be in power for, a lot of years, certain military generals and people of that nature, they would have an idea, because if we look at politicians and prime ministers and presidents, they're usually only in top seats of power for only 4 to 8 years. So a lot gets slid by them, but then there has been a few, I'm sure, that have been aware or have come across this. Even President Eisenhower warned about the military-industrial complex, and that we should be aware of it in terms of things going corporate and privatised, and which is, what is being done now. A lot of stuff's outsourced, so it doesn't have government oversight.
Exactly, and it's all on a need-to-know basis. I believe they would go for a top-secret security clearance, like a polygraph. It's several different levels, different interviews, interrogations. They would go for like a cosmic clearance. The government would follow the person's family. It's very detailed, and then it would go on levels of information. So it goes to show it's very heavily protected, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Their phones are tapped and monitored. They pretty much know every move until people get bought into these deep projects, whether, with whatever it's got to be. It might have nothing to do with UFOs, but still they've got to make sure the people are, who they say they are in terms of the way that they live their life. They need to know who they're interacting with, who their friends are, who their family are. There's a lot of things to take into consideration.
And there's certain steps that you'd have to take to get access to one of these facilities. It's these bases are basically impenetrable. There is no access. Even politicians, even prime ministers, presidents, even they struggle to get access. They're denied entry. It goes to show what's being hidden there is above top secret. From your family and friends when you've addressed these stories of how you've had encounters.
For some of them, it's a bit hard. They believe me, but it's a bit hard for them to listen to because it's just so out there. But there is a lot of support. Everyone now has actually experienced something with me, whether it's been daytime crafts at night time, or paranormal activity. So they know that this is real themselves. But when we talk about it in general, it's a bit hard for them sometimes to just come to grips with it, because it's just, it is hard to believe. And if I hadn't experienced what I had myself, I'd be open to it, but I don't know if I'd believe it myself.
I believe there's certain areas where they're attracted to more. I know Melbourne, here's very active as far as sightings. And I know Bundaberg too, up there's been a lot of people claiming that they've seen strange craft.
Yeah, no, there's definitely a lot of hot spots, whether it's got to do with the ley lines or the veils being thin between worlds or portals around those areas. Like, for example, Melbourne, the first Parliament House in Australia was built there, and that's because it was a portal area. They've built a lot of these government places on portals like we're speaking about. And so, there's lots of places. Sydney gets a lot of stuff. I've been to Uluru. I did see some stuff in Uluru as well. But it's all around the world. There's one place that I go to that I'm a part of, and I've got ESETI Australia, which is another website of mine besides petermaxwellslattery.com. And James Gilliland owns this ranch over there where tens of thousands of people have flocked to over the years, and I've filmed crafts going in and out of the mountain. It's just crazy. There's a multi-dimensional base inside the mountain, and there is government surveillance, but, anyone in the community has gone to that place, and they've done conferences, and they've seen the crafts themselves. And that Mount Adams itself goes back to the Yakima Lights, and the Native Americans say that there was a big history there with the mountain and UFOs. So we've got these spots all over the planet. We hear about the normal ones like Bermuda Triangle and all these different places that are out there. But I think there's, it happens worldwide, but there is these little hot pockets and hot spots.
Exactly right. And some people, they'll even take some camping equipment and they'll pitch that near a base, and they'll sit there and watch all night, stargazing. And that's where a lot of footage has come forward too. Some of the footage, it's been like stars moving around in angles and trajectories that it's just not natural. Stars don't really move back and forwards. Stop stationary and then continue traveling again. That's really cool.
Yeah, it is, and it's like worldwide that this is being filmed. Even recently, about a bit under a year ago, I went to Area 51 just while I was on holidays going to Las Vegas, and I went and checked it out, and I saw some stuff around there as well.
That's fascinating.
Not knowing what it is. Yeah, because I think if they are still doing stuff there, it may be a bit stupid because it's just a hot spot. With some of these people, we our lives are in their hands during a time of war. So if we can't trust them, with this information, how could we trust them when we're in a time of war? Or some of these people have got high clearance or the same clearance as a president in the US, for example, where they can even press the nuclear button themselves. They've been in missile silos while they've been shut down with these UFOs flying over, actually making it so the warheads won't even work.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, there's a lot of these cases out there, but, I'm just the average person. And I've been able to experience some extraordinary things and have a lot of witnesses and evidence to back it up. But there are these people out there, whether they're firemen, police officers, people, ambulance, lawyers, people in governments, people that are shop owners, people that are school teachers, all walks of life, truck drivers. I've spoken to so many different people from all walks of life that they won't talk about it publicly, but they've experienced these things and they know that this is real.
Yeah, very much so. Now, it's documented the government made an agreement with an off-world entity in exchange for technology. They would be allowed access for human and cattle manipulation and mutilation privileges. That's what seems to be the general consensus, isn't it, Peter?
It is a lot. Some of them don't agree with that in the UFO community, but a large majority of them do, going back to whether it's papers or so-called video I don't think it's even been seen, but there was apparently a documentary done on this, I think maybe in the 70s in America, that I think just didn't end up seeing the light of day. But there is a lot of whistleblowers that have come forward with similar information to what you're saying, and saying that there has been an off-world race come here and interact with. It might have been President Eisenhower at the time, from what I remember. But, we just don't know facts at the moment, but that is going around in the circles and has been for a long time.
Yeah, and it's believed they gave us things like fibre optic cables, what we back-engineered from the craft, magnetic levitation technologies. Magnets is something they're very big on.
Yeah, Colonel Philip Corso, he wrote the book The Day After Roswell. Now, he was a very high up, I think even during, he was in World War II, came out, he worked for the Eisenhower administration under Trudeau, I think the bloke's name was, who was a general.
Yeah.
And he was given, if I remember any of this correctly, I'm just trying to remember the best that I can, he was giving a cabinet, and in the cabinet apparently had parts from the Roswell crash. Mm. And so from that, he gave to American industry, meaning, things like night vision devices came from it, fibre optics, the computer circuit chip, a lot of these different things that we've now got that we take for granted today, they were given to companies that were working on similar things at the time, or if anything, they could try and understand this technology. And so he was, today he died of, I don't know how many years ago now. This is the mid-90s that he came out with the book. Mm-hmm. But he was taken very seriously. We've even had astronauts come forward in America anyway talking about this reality as well. One of them, Gordon Cooper, actually, had experiences, and we've had people, other astronauts come forward as well. So
yeah, absolutely. And some abductees, they go to see a hypnotist, and then they have regressed memories that are brought to the surface. That happens a considerable amount of time, doesn't it?
It does. And I know some of the therapists, one of them, Mary Rodwell, who's world-renowned. She's had over 3,000 clients, and she's helped me out before.
And you see companies like Lockheed Martin, they're behind a lot of the projects in regards to construction of these craft, aren't they?
Yeah, it's said that. I forget the bloke's name, but the bloke that used to run Lockheed Martin, I think at one of his last conferences, showed quickly a picture jokingly of a stealth flying saucer. So it looked black, like the stealth bomber. And he said, we've got the technology now to take ET home. But if we look at who's at the forefront of all these things, we had the Third Reich go to the US in Project Paperclip.
Exactly.
And so America straight away got a lot of these very advanced, knowledgeable scientists. And that was implemented into NASA, and I'm sure that they were drawing up a lot of things that were eventually outsourced, because NASA were the people by the people. But soon after, a lot of the stuff got bought out of NASA and taken into other corporations. So it's a very complex thing that's been going on here, so there can't be much tracking done.
Yes, that's exactly what's happening. And any government workers that threaten to expose any of these secret operations, they get threatened, as well as their family. Some of them end up suicided off. There's no limit to how far they will go to cover up these secret plans and operations.
Yeah, it's there's so many different stories that I've heard about. People have had things done to them, surveillance, or they've been taken out. And the secret is pretty big. That's definitely a possibility, because the information we're talking about, you know, is probably the most important issue on the planet, because it does come down to almost resolving all our issues, from, you know, pollution to free energy to transport issues to environmental issues, health technologies, to, you know, a lot of these diseases and ailments could be healed instantaneously with some of the devices and back engineering of what these crafts and or technologies in them have.
100%.
So, yeah, it's amazing what can come of this once it's out.
The politicians, they're really working hard against the people, denying natural medicines, chemtrails, 5G networks, the list goes on. Some people say the level of evil that we're seeing, it's just not human, possibly be reptilian or off-world.
Yeah, I think it comes back to those, like, for example, even a lot of the politicians, I don't even think they're aware of what's going on. I think what's going on is their education has got them to a certain level to where they just blindly believe anything. For example, what they're being told in the textbooks, what we see on the news, which a lot of it now is fake media. So I think the problem is with a lot of the politicians is they're not fully aware of what's going on, because they don't have a need to know. So what they do is implement these agendas. You know, even with the pharmaceutical companies, they push to keep on getting their stuff out there and don't want to look at new technologies or new things that can resolve health issues, because they're making a lot from the drugs that they're selling.
Exactly.
So they want to keep the same money system going on, and they want to keep the same dollar going on, because that's how, you know, the banks and the stock market and everything works. So we do have a problem here. And I think a lot of the people that work in these organisations, it's like police officers. There's a few bad police officers out there, but a majority of them are good people.
And you could see why the public would say that they are reptilian, because they're so cold-blooded. And that's why...
Well, it is. It's, yeah. You and I wouldn't do it, but they would. So this is where whoever's in charge, you know, of implementing what new rules or agendas or laws, we need to really look at them and just go try and see where that's coming from, because a lot of the time it does come back to corporations and people that have an interest, and they don't want their interest being screwed with. And if it is, well, then, you know, sometimes they'll do whatever they can for it to, you know, to keep their agenda going.
Exactly. And you see a lot of their company logos, there's serpent imagery involved in a lot of the symbols. So it's interwoven into the fabric of community.
Yeah, well, you know, the all-seeing eye, the Illuminati pyramid, Knights Templar Freemasons. And I even think, funny enough, I've met some of the people in these organisations, and some of them go, yeah, there's some weird stuff that goes on, and some go, you know, it's not weird to me. But when you talk to them, I think that some of these people are telling the truth that I've spoken to, that they don't get to see what's really going on, or what the rituals behind the rituals, you know, why they're doing the rituals, what's behind it, what esoteric knowledge or power does it have. And it's the same with the symbology. There is a big thing to do with symbology the world over.
A lot of people are taken serious because they've got records of any encounters they come across, adding more credibility to their story. Such as yourself and your channel, you've covered so much on there. It would be hard for somebody to not agree with your testimonials.
Yeah, well, like I say, I'm not out there to convince people. I'm there to present my story and tell what I've experienced. And I want people to come to their own conclusions, because I think what we've got as a problem as a society is just blindly believing. And I don't want people to blindly believe me. They can look at the stuff and come to their own conclusions. But I think, you know, if anyone could prove this, we wouldn't even be talking about this worldwide as a civilization, because it would have been proven. But there is, you know, other forces out there that don't want this out there. But it's just a matter of time with presenting what we are. And, you know, again, it's not just me, people around the world. People have just got to ask, you know, if this is happening worldwide and happening everywhere, well, then there's got to be something to it.
And the question is, has the government created a lot of these craft, and are they manning it themselves now with the technology that they've been given? It's hard to say. A lot of people are speculating.
Yeah, with a lot of what I film, there is telepathy and communication. And like people say, he just knows when they're there. I'll just walk out and they're there. But there is objects that I have seen, for example, on the internet. There's even a US Navy drone that was released, I think, maybe 5-6 years ago. And it looks identical to the Roswell craft. And there's no propulsion system on it that you can sort of see from the side angles. I'm sure that there is. But now with unmanned aerial vehicles, they're using them for military exercises and even to drop bombs and certain things. There are things out there that if people aren't acquainted with advanced technologies, they would put down to being a UFO. So we do have some pretty exotic stuff that we've created ourselves.
Yeah.
Whether some of it's been back engineered or not. But yeah, it's these days people have just got to use discernment because we just don't know what's what at the moment with a lot of what's out there.
And to keep the public in the dark should be a real crime against humanity. Taxpayers are the ones that are funding a lot of these black budget projects. A lot of the money is being fraudulently funneled off into these projects under the guise of other operations. So there's many layers to this, isn't there?
Definitely. And they call them unacknowledged projects as well. So they will, you know, America, going back to, I think, 2001, I think just before 9/11, there was, I think even the day before, they reported, forgive me if I'm wrong, I think maybe it was 3 trillion or something ridiculous like that was missing from their budget that was unaccounted
That's
for.
right.
So not saying that's where it went, but there's a good chance that it did because the amount of money that needs to go into these programs for getting materials and doing operations would be a lot of money. And, governments around the world have been caught out filtering money into different things in the past.
Exactly.
That have been reported in the mainstream media. So it is a crime, but at the same time, it does come down to just using discernment with all this information.
Do you think by 2020 this will be common knowledge and everybody will be made aware of the current situation with extraterrestrials and reptilian creatures?
Well, I think we're not far off a point now where at least the idea of the UFOs being real or something out in space is being real. We've got the Pentagon that's revisited its files that it started in 2007, give or take, I believe, which led to an investigation of the Skinwalker. Or actually, it was because of the Skinwalker Ranch when they heard about that they say that they got interested in the subject.
Right. Bob Bigelow, wasn't it? Aerospace.
Yeah, Bob Bigelow. But they were saying before that they hadn't investigated since Project Blue Book, which ended sometime in the 60s. So now we're seeing in the Washington Post and New York Times and even here in Australia on our mainstream media that, again, America is investigating it. So they're slowly putting this stuff and releasing military footage and things like that. But there is a controlled, disclosure going on. But I think we're going to get to a period soon where just a common average person is going to think, oh, well, there is something to it. Because all the kids, we don't even need to talk about this with kids anymore because kids are just, they come into this world blown wide open, knowing that this is a real reality.
That's right. And a lot of people that have been contacted and abducted and they've released information, they get a visit by the men in black, some strange gentlemen that lacking of all facial hair to eyebrows, acting very strange. And they basically would invade the person's house, take any evidence whatsoever, and just threaten the person. Really bizarre encounters with these gentlemen. What have you heard
I've
about
had
that?
a couple of encounters myself. So I know that these guys exist. I've seen one in shadow form with a hat, and I've seen a black car that had blokes in it that revved the car and sort of drove it straight at me after I had a sighting that ended up on Yahoo News a couple of years ago, which was a weird experience on the outer skirts of Melbourne. So I've had a few experiences knowing that this is real, but there is, again, different stories and variations. Some of them, they say they look alien. Some of them say that they don't look human, but nor alien. They almost look like they're made out of wax.
It's insane.
All different stories.
That's right. And even government workers have mentioned to colleagues, oh, is that the CIA? And someone said, no, that's not who they are. It's, a secret task force trying to interview abductees and discredit steal evidence. It goes back right to the 60s, doesn't it? There's photographs of these people.
Yeah, there's been a few photographs, I think, on UFO Hunters, the History Channel show. There was one of them on that. Even in recent times, there was a supposed video that showed a couple of them, I think, walking into a building somewhere, which they were able to get,
Yes.
on the CCTV camera. But there seems to be these blokes that pop up, and I don't think anyone knows where they're from. And if they do, it's got to do with a secret task force, like you're saying, that's their job primarily, to either get rid of evidence or find out what's happened at a place at a certain time when an event's taken place.
Yeah, and what annoys me is Hollywood, they like to make a joke and a mockery out of all of it to try and, once again, discredit and take away the serious nature of it all, and to dispel any serious allegations that come forward. They like to make humour out of it, which, it shouldn't be the way to approach it. It should be dealt with in a more delicate manner, shouldn't it?
Yeah, well, it's a serious subject, and unfortunately that's what's happened, with just the media in general. They've tried to make this like Little Green Men or something like that, but this affects people's lives the world over, and it's a real reality. And, again, people are just being affected all the time. That, people have lost jobs from this. They've lost family, friends. Their life has gone downhill in some cases just because nobody's believed them, but they know what they experienced and they know what they've seen.
Exactly right. And a lot of people that have stepped forward, they get sequestered, a 5150 hold, they get put in for a psychological evaluation. And, that's so disrespectful when they've given many years of service to the government, and then for them to be treated like that, it's really disgusting, isn't it?
Yeah, but it just comes down to now we're here in the present now, and we've just got to move forward. And now these days with social media and shows like yours and people being able to get out, we can get past a lot of it now. It's still going on, but we can get past a lot of it.
Frightening. A lot of people don't know which way to turn or what to believe. It must be reassuring for yourself, having spoken to other contactees and abductees and relaying information of experiences. How has that helped?
Yeah, it's good because you get to bounce off each other. I don't talk to many, but there's a few that, if they come across my path, we sort of just hit it off and talk. So you know that you're not alone. Again, I know there's many of us out there. A majority aren't public, and that's okay. They're doing what they've got to do, but it is reassuring knowing that there is both, good and dark forces out there. Because, back in the 90s, all we'd hear is, negative stories from the research that I've done, and then everyone thinks it's love and light as well. But there is this, both sides here. And what we've got to do as a human race is do this ourselves, because that's what they've said to me as well. You can't trust us. We need you to do it yourself. You need to raise up yourselves so nobody can control you. Because behind everyone doing a deed, a majority of the time there is an agenda. But like they've said to me, we've got to do this ourselves.
Exactly. And if by rare chance one of the viewers has a paranormal experience, what would you recommend they do? Contact agencies like MUFON or your organisation, Peter?
I'll just say look for somebody local in your area. A lot of the time these days there's people, in cities or sometimes in the rural areas that deal with this sort of thing. So just Google your area, maybe put paranormal or UFO in. And if not, maybe the closest capital city, and they might be able to direct you to somebody in your local area.
So they shouldn't be in fear that they're going to be judged. It's they're safe to come forward and explain what they've been through, even in a confidential setting if need be.
Yeah, a lot of these groups have counsellors, like qualified counsellors or psychologists that deal specifically with this, and they're non-judgmental, and, they will listen to you. They're not going to go and blurt your story out in the news or ridicule you or anything like that. They will, that's what they do. So they're around the country and they're around the world for that matter as well.
And you would have been upset David Icke was banned, and he speaks about reptilian matters, and they wouldn't even let him in to talk about that. That's crazy, isn't it?
In America when that happened, and it was a sad day because I just thought, the freedom of speech that day took a big hit, because being Australian, it's all about giving everyone a fair go, whether you agree with them or not. And I think now he's allowed back in the country, it just is a shame that it went through all this for that to happen. He's been here many times. There was never any problem with it. And, you know, a lot of the things, if not all the things they accused him of, except for the reptilian thing, he'd never even said. So this is just something that was blown out of proportion. And unfortunately, you know, he had to be the precursor, if not the pinpoint for that to happen at. And, you know, again, a lot of people don't know he packs out Wembley Arena and stadiums all across the world. And I think he does a lot of great work as well. And it was just a sad day for humanity to hear that, you know, freedom of speech, liberty had been taken again, a big hit. But it's good that he's able to come back now.
Exactly. And if you go back 6 or 7 years ago, it's very rare any talk of reptilian, anything like that, hybrids, shape-shifting, interdimensional creatures. It just was never spoken about. Now it seems very common. It's like it's really just come out of the woodwork all of a sudden, and people are doing their research, and it's all coming to light, and it's all verified throughout ancient books and teachings.
Yeah, a lot of ancient cultures go into all this, whether it's the bearded gods or the reptilians or whatnot. And I think a lot of people just didn't want to go there because it was just so far out that, you know, everyone's talking about grey aliens at the time. They're like, if I bring up anything else, I'm going to sound crazy. But there was people like David Icke, Credo Mutwa, Jordan Maxwell, who had heard stories going back, I think, even to the 60s about reptilians. So they've been out, but it seemed that in later years there's been this big sort of wave of reptilian stories and everything like that come forward.
It's good that people have the courage to come forward now. And it's even written in the Sumerian texts way back in the day.
Yeah, a lot of ancient texts go into it. A lot of ancient cultures and elders that I've spoken to, it seems to be part of their known history that, you know, there are these entities and beings out there, or shape-shifting entities as well, like we hear at Skinwalker Ranch or the Jinn. You know, there's lots of different types of these entities. So,
and where do you see the UFO community heading in the future? Is everybody getting along, working together, or has there been a divide and conquer operation put in?
It's a mixed bag, and that's unfortunate that it's a mixed bag, but I think you get that with anything. But, you know, people are starting to get past their differences. Some people aren't. It's just like school. You know, I think any group is like that. I heard Art Bell, the famous talk show host, once say to my mate James Gilliland, the UFO community would, you know, some people in it would eat their young. But you get that with anything, like I say. But I don't know, you sort of attract what you need in terms of what you're in line with. And so, you know, if people are into bickering and fighting, they'll come across that. If they're into like unity and oneness and learning from each other, they'll attract that as well. But yeah, I just have been very lucky in the community in terms of just doing what I do, and I just stick to myself. And there is a few people that I work with, like I said, but I think that's what people need to do, is just keep focused on themselves and what they're doing, how they can contribute, not just to this field, but just in their everyday life, just how they can be a good person and be of service and play their part in humanity. And I think if we all do that, a lot of the differences would just dissolve overnight.
Well, Peter, I want to thank you very much for being brave and bringing your story to We Are Change. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, and I appreciate it as well.
Excellent. Good luck with everything in the future.
Cheers, mate.
For any viewers that believe they've experienced something extraterrestrial or other, there'll be links in the description for resources available that can assist you further. Thanks for joining me on this episode, and I'll catch you next time. And keep looking up at the skies, folks. Are you tired of hearing lies and fake news on mainstream media? Do you find it insulting to your intelligence? Well, look no further. The We Are Change talk show is here. President Trump has launched airstrikes on Syria. A lot of his prominent conservative supporters have turned against him after this action. Have you suffered human rights violations or been a victim of corruption? The We Are Change talk show would like to hear about it. Phone the number on your screen today.
Who the hell's going to listen to a little guy? You guys are, thanks.
Yes, it's what we're here for.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And what I hope is they don't put a mother and a child in the house, because that child will die. And no one seems to believe me.
Once again, much love to everybody at We Are Change, and I look forward to seeing you guys at more events in the future and working more closely with you.
Beautiful. Thank you very much for the call, my friend, and all the best of luck moving into the future.
Much appreciated.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it. You know, the legendary Jeff. You know.
Without the instrument of We Are Change, we will not have a future. We will not have a country or world to leave to our children. We won't have children able to function in it. So be a part of it, join it.
We Are Change Melbourne gives those who mainstream media have ignored a voice, exposing corruption, injustice, human rights issues, and much more. We Are Change Melbourne is the voice of the people.
Yeah, this is Jeff. Met Jeff for the first time I'd met Jeff. He too is a lovely chap, and he has a YouTube channel called We Are Change Melbourne. So if any of these topics pique your interest, pop over to We Are Change Melbourne and say good day to Jeff. You've seen that video that's just going past the interview, Enough is Enough. Watch that one.
Phone the number on your screen and be connected with the We Are Change talk show.